My boyfriend and his first love got into a car accident. I went blind, and she broke her bones. In the hospital corner, I overheard my boyfriend on the phone with his brother. "Hey, you need to take care of Stella for me, okay? We sound alike, so she won't notice. I'm taking Jessica abroad for surgery. She needs me." His first love asked him, "Aren't you worried about leaving your girlfriend with your brother?" Gary chuckled, "My brother and she are both such traditional folks. They wouldn't cross any lines." Hiding in the corner, my lips quivered, tears streaming down. How did Gary know I liked his brother? When he got back and planned to propose to me, his brother Eric wrapped an arm around me and said with a cryptic smile, "Your sister-in-law is expecting, aren't you over it yet?" At 2 a.m., I suddenly got a call from Gary. The other side was noisy, and it was his brother speaking. Sounding frantic, he said, "Gary got into a fight at the bar. You need to come over." Then he hung up. I wasn't sure why he needed me, but I jumped out of bed, threw on a coat, and got a cab. I checked the suite number Gary texted. As I opened the door, a mix of smoke and alcohol hit me. Seeing me, they paused the music. Gary was chillin' on the center sofa. Well, she actually came with just one call. Look at her, showing up in pajamas. She's really in deep for Gary. Jessica, holding a wine glass, teased, "Gary, you really tricked her into coming here, huh?" Ignoring the laughter, I just kept my eyes on Gary. Seeing he was okay, I sighed with relief. "You're fine. That's all that matters," I whispered. The people around us laughed again. "Wow, she really is a backup. That's some dedication. Does your girl have any friends to set me up with?" Still clutching the hangover soup I brought, I put it on the table in front of Gary. Softly, I said, "You have fun, I won't disturb you." Just as I was about to leave, Gary grabbed me onto his lap. Breathing in the heavy scent of alcohol, I leaned back slightly, frowning, looking into my eyes with a smile. He asked, "Are you mad?" I paused, then shook my head, "No." They were right. I'm Gary's backup. And I've been Gary's backup for 6 years, ever since middle school. I'm always at his beck and call. Every morning, I'd bring him breakfast, deliver water to the basketball court, and run errands for his new girlfriends. From middle to high school, my whole world was studying and Gary. I thought after high school, he'd go abroad and I'd finally get some peace in college. But then, he ended up in the same college as me, and he confessed his feelings. Well, maybe it wasn't really a confession. He said, "Stella, you've been after me for so long. Now that high school's over, let's just be together." His friends chanted, all that backup work finally paid off. Stella's something else, Gary's never approached a girl before. Jessica stood not far off, her gaze unreadable. I never expected Gary to be with me. Feeling stiff, I didn't know how to respond. I said I'd think about it, then ran home like I was escaping. Wondering if I tried too hard and made Gary think I liked him. Back home, Dad excitedly announced he got promoted from deputy manager to general manager, with $1 million bonus. Mom subtly mentioned Gary's dad wanted me to keep an eye on Gary, so he doesn't fool around. Then, she added an extra $1,000 to my monthly allowance. Later, Gary asked for my answer, and I agreed. Figured it wasn't a bad deal. Gary's changing girlfriends from middle to high school lasted less than a month each, so I thought I'd soon be dumped too. Plus, our family's financial status stepped up thanks to Gary. I kept waiting to get dumped, but 2 years flew by. Only later did I know his confession was just to rile up Jessica. Turns out, he didn't like me much, at least, that's what I thought. Maybe he stayed with me 'cause I was obedient and the breakfasts suited him. His relationship with Jessica was a mess. They knew each other too well, almost their whole lives, but they fought all the time. He'd upset her till she got a stomach ache, then have me deliver meds late at night. When they patched things up, he'd ask me to get her favorite cake. They'd make up and break up, and I was like a catalyst. Sometimes, Jessica would ask Gary, if Stella and I fell in water, who would you save? With his arm around me, he'd casually reply, "Of course, I'd save my girlfriend." Why save a tomboy? You wouldn't save me. You're dead. Jessica would scold him, chasing him around. I'd just stare at Gary's profile, silent. Pinching my cheek, he'd laugh. What, you moved? I didn't reply. I knew Gary wouldn't choose me. My intuition proved right. On a rainy day, Jessica was driving us to a summer social project. Suddenly, at an intersection, a car sped towards us. Jessica's car was slammed aside by the impact. My head slammed into the window, buzzing with pain, vision in black and white. Fear surged through me. Faintly saw Gary frantically banging on the window. He yanked the car door open. Gary, I called weakly. But he stepped past me and carried Jessica out. Jessica cried, clinging to Gary's neck, and he comforted her. Carrying her, he didn't spare me a glance. I mustered all my strength, barely grabbing Gary's clothes. Finally, he noticed me. Stella, hang on, he said. The ambulance is coming soon. My car only fits two, and she's hurt worse. With that, he carried Jessica away, leaving me alone in the car. I suddenly felt an unprecedented panic. The light in front of me started to fade. At the moment of fainting, I wanted to shout to Gary, who was holding Jessica. I could have squeezed into the trunk. I woke up, or maybe I didn't. There was a strong smell of disinfectant around me. But I couldn't see anything, it was pitch black. Why was there no one around? I felt uneasy inside. I got up and stumbled forward. There seemed to be a wall ahead, but I couldn't feel anything. When I thought there was nothing ahead, my foot tripped over something. Finally, I made it out of the room and heard Gary's voice. I leaned against the wall, trying to get closer to the sound. Jessica, stop crying, it's just a fracture, Gary said softly. You're becoming as emotional as Stella. Jessica replied tearfully, with this big scar on my face and a broken leg, I'll never get married. Will you marry me? I heard Gary's voice drop. It's not a big deal. If you can't get married, I'll marry you. I'll go with you to the U.S. for surgery, and I promise your leg and face will look just like before. Jessica asked, what about your girlfriend Stella? I heard Gary reply nonchalantly, I'll call my brother and ask him to take care of her. She's blind now, and our voices are the same, so she won't notice. My fingers gripping the wall turned white. Gary used the speakerphone when he called his brother Eric. Hey, can you use my identity to take care of Stella for me? She's blind, and our voices are the same, so she won't notice I am taking Jessica abroad for surgery. She's been with me since childhood and needs me. I started breathing heavily. I was sensitive to sounds now that I couldn't see. On the other end, it sounded like there was a meeting going on. After a while, a voice just like Gary's, but with a more refined quality, came through. Sure, he said, but don't have any regrets. Once he got a yes, Gary chuckled, thanks. My body wavered as my fingertips clung tightly to the wall. My lips trembled, and tears streamed down. Gary, how did he know I liked his brother? This was such a lucky break. Was this my reward after being treated poorly by Gary all these years? My heart raced with excitement, and I carefully felt my way back to the hospital room. I got under the covers, waiting calmly for Gary's brother Eric to come for me. In Jessica's room, she asked Gary, are you sure about leaving your girlfriend with your brother? Gary laughed, my brother and she are both very traditional, nothing out of line would happen, I know their character well. Jessica looked at him, seems like you're not that into Stella, huh? If Stella finds out about you and your brother, let's see if you're still laughing. Who said I don't like Stella? Gary retorted, I'm just taking Jessica for her surgery first. I'll make it up to Stella when I get back. With her soft personality, she'll be easily comforted. Jessica wrapped herself in her blanket, turning away from him, I'm just waiting for your plan to fail. I remembered the first time I met Eric. It was back in sophomore year, at his mountainside villa. Gary held a pool party up there. I wasn't part of their circle, but Gary invited me anyway. I wanted to find an excuse not to go, but Gary just pushed me into the car. In a villa that big, I figured they wouldn't miss one servant. So when we got there, I found a corner to do my homework after finishing. The party was still going, so I found another spot to nap. When I woke up, it was already midnight, and Gary and his friends had left. Gary forgot about me again. Feeling unlucky, I backpacked my stuff and squatted at the villa gate, trying to get a ride home with my phone. The weather changed quickly, and it started to rain. I hugged myself, shrinking into a ball. No one was picking up the fare because it was such a remote place. Gary's phone wasn't reachable either. Just as I was racking my brain on how to get home, someone walked towards me with an umbrella. I looked up, a pair of black leather shoes, neatly pressed suit trousers, perfectly snug suit jacket. As he got closer, the black umbrella tilted towards me. I looked up. The man was tall, even taller than Gary. Deep-set eyes, well-defined lips, with a subdued and composed aura. He bore a resemblance to Gary. He must be Gary's brother, Eric. "Are you Gary's classmate, Stella?" he asked, his voice low and pleasant though he held an authoritative presence. His eyes showed none of the coldness or disdain. Looking at me, his eyes were incredibly soft. I nodded, trying to stand, but having squatted too long, my legs were numb. Eric patiently extended his hand toward me. He was completely different from Gary. His demeanor was that of a gentleman. Using his hand for support, I stood up, almost falling into his arms, but I managed to compose myself to avoid embarrassment. Eric let me stay at the villa for the night, and it was he who drove me to school the next day. From that day on, I often dreamed about him. I wanted to get into a good college so that the next time I met him, I would appear more respectable. But things didn't go as planned, and in college, I started dating Gary. I saw Eric more often, but I couldn't muster the courage to look at him as freely as I did the first time. In the hospital room, the doctor said to Eric that I hit my head, causing damage to the motor nerves of my eye. Fortunately, it wasn't serious and could slowly recover. I wanted to recuperate at home. I didn't like the smell of disinfectant or the oppressive hospital atmosphere. "Your parents are on a business trip with your brother, so no one can take care of you at home. Would you like to stay with me instead?" Eric's voice was clean and gentle, with a strangely calming allure. I paused, slowly nodding. In the shadows, my palms were sweaty, and I could even catch the scent of Eric's woody cologne. He must be standing as he did when we first met, wearing a finely tailored shirt and custom black pants, nodding and smiling with great poise. I almost called out Eric's name without thinking, caught myself just in time. My ears got a little warm, so I called out in his direction, "Gary," while my mind was swirling. Eric held my hand and led me out of the hospital, guiding me carefully into the car. Once I was in, I realized I might have some anxiety about cars. The car suddenly made a sharp turn, and I lost my balance, falling onto Eric. I felt nervous, unsure about what had just happened. My heart pounded, and I held his waist tightly. Eric patted my back reassuringly. "Don't worry, it's nothing, just a turn. Take it slow." His scent was clean and comforting, different from the smell of smoke and alcohol that Gary carried. Since Eric agreed to take care of me as Gary, he's now my boyfriend. I thought, perhaps I could just have a secret relationship with Eric like this. My phone buzzed at the worst possible moment. I handed it to Eric to check for me since I couldn't see and didn't know how to use it. "It's your mom," he said, answering it for me. On the other end was cheerful music. They seemed to be at Disney with my brother today. "Stella, how's it going with Gary? Can you intern at his company this summer?" "Mom, I got into a car accident today," I said, my voice breaking a little as I mentioned my temporary blindness and the impossibility of interning this summer. She sounded a bit anxious. "What about Gary? Was he in the accident too? Is he all right?" I was stunned, my mouth slightly open. It took me a moment to respond. "He's fine." "Good, make sure you nurture your relationship with Gary, okay?" Before I could answer, Eric took the phone from me. "Ma'am, didn't you hear your daughter? She was in a car accident and got hurt. You're more worried about Gary than her?" He was calm, but there was a chill in his voice. "Oh, Stella got hurt? Stella, are you okay?" The voice on the other end was embarrassed. Holding back tears, I was about to answer, but Eric spoke for me. Hypocrite, he said, then hung up. Eric looked at me. Are you mad at how I talk to your mom? I shook my head. I knew Eric stood up for me. For years, I had grown used to my parents ignoring me suddenly. A warm hand patted my head. It's okay, I'll always be by your side. My heart skipped a beat, thrilled yet uncertain if he was just playing the Gary role. Eric set my phone to blind mode and patiently taught me how to use it. Once we reached his place, he showed me the layout of the room and the bathroom essentials. I walked into the edge of a table, expecting pain, but it didn't hurt. Curious, I felt it and realized it was soft, a foam edge. All the furniture was covered in foam strips, and there were anti-slip mats in the bathroom. Eric was surprisingly thoughtful, or maybe efficient. More likely, one of his careful staff suggested or arranged it. I was happy staying here. Thankfully it was summer, and 2 months should be enough for my eyes to heal. But I worried, once my eyes were better, I'd have no reason to stay at Eric's place. Here, Eric would lead me downstairs for meals, thoughtfully serve me food, and say goodnight before Beatty cherished the warmth of his hand when he led me and the scent when I was close. A sudden clap of thunder from the living room startled me. I jerked, the glass I was holding crashed to the floor, shattering loudly. Eric quickly came running. Are you okay? He asked, hurrying over. Panicking, I squatted down, blindly searching the ground, worried about cleaning up the mess. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I said, my hand just touching the floor when Eric grabbed it. Suddenly, I was lifted into the air, and I gasped. Eric set me on the couch. No need to apologize. It's just a glass. Someone will clean up the shards, but please don't touch them, okay? You might get hurt. My eyes unfocused as I looked at Eric, mumbling, I don't want to trouble you. How could you be a trouble, Stella? He said, holding my ankle, feeling his warmth on my skin. Eric knelt before me, checking for cuts. Another thunderclap boomed, making me shiver again. I wasn't afraid of the thunder itself. I get startled easily. The rain outside began with a steady rhythm, with occasional rolling thunder. Are you scared of the thunder? He noticed my shiver. I clenched my hands, taking a bold step. You said you're my boyfriend, so can you sleep with me tonight? I regretted it instantly, feeling the tears well in my shame. Eric was only helping out as Gary. I was being shameless asking him to stay with me. Such an upright person wouldn't agree, right? Sure. Don't worry, I'll stay with you tonight. I froze, shocked he agreed. Tears of embarrassment stayed in my eyes, ready to fall. I hesitated, but he already picked me up, placing me on the bed. He held me close. Eric leaned against the headboard, and I nestled against his chest, wrapping my arms around his waist. Sleep, I'll be right here the whole time. I slept well, quickly drifting off in Eric's arms. He wasn't ready for bed yet, so he quietly browsed tomorrow's schedule on his iPad. A message pinged. It was a voice note from Gary. Eric put on headphones. I'm in the UK now, Gary's voice said. The weather forecast mentioned thunderstorms in a city tonight. Stella's scared of thunder. And with her eyes not working, she must be even more afraid. Eric looked down at the peacefully sleeping face buried against his chest. He tightened his hold around her waist. Don't worry. She's sleeping soundly. Gary was still rambling on in a voice message. You won't believe it, I was shocked when I found out there are people scared of thunder. Back then, a thunderclap during our evening study made Stella jump like a startled rabbit. I mean, how can someone be so timid? Eric frowned a little and typed, knowing she's timid, yet you left her behind. Gary's voice faded on the other end. I couldn't just ignore Jessica too, you know. Hey, could you send me a pic of Stella right now? It's funny, just a couple of days without seeing her and I kinda miss her. Eric raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Yeah, Stella's a heavy sleeper, she won't notice. She likes me so much, a few days away and she's sure to miss me a lot. Good thing I have you to keep her company. If it's inconvenient, you can take it during the day. Since you say so, I'll send it to you later. On the other end, Gary looked at the photo his brother sent and then glanced at Jessica, who was working on her leg rehab. He quietly left the room, took out his phone, and enlarged the picture. It was just a side view of the girl's face, her hair a bit messy, sleeping peacefully. So cute, Gary mumbled. He long pressed the picture to save it. Enlarging it made him puzzled. How come Stella's pillow doesn't match her bedding? It's dark-colored. Going abroad for surgery and still can't forget your little girlfriend, Jessica snarked from the doorway. Gary showed her the photo. Look, Stella's without me, and she's gotten thinner, he concluded. She's really crazy about me. Jessica examined the phone for a moment and burst into laughter. Congrats, your girlfriend's got a man now. Look at her pillow. Clearly it's a guy's pajamas fabric. Gary snatched back his phone, feeling embarrassed. No way, don't I know what kind of person Stella is? She's even too shy to let me hold her hand. Plus, my brother took the photo. Who doesn't know he's always been disinterested in stuff like that? Stella's staying at his place. Maybe she snagged one of my pajamas to think of me. He looked at the photo deeply, his finger gently touching the girl's face in it. Jessica's feelings got a bit complicated, and to hide her hint of sadness, she scoffed at Gary. Hope you stay that self-absorbed forever. Eric wasn't surprised Gary didn't recognize the pajamas as his. He wasn't ready to reveal everything just yet. He didn't want Stella to see that side of him. As long as he could be by her side, that's all that mattered. Whatever the role might be. In my sleep, I thought I heard Gary's voice. Was he going to have me send over hangover soup again? No, he was overseas with Jessica. He won't be looking for me. I exhaled, relieved. Suddenly, thoughts of my parents came rushing back. Stella, even if not for this family, do it for your brother. Get Gary to like you, okay? Life's about bowing and scraping. Be a bit more slick. Your parents spent so much nurturing you, sending you to an expensive school so you'd build good bonds there, which will be beneficial in the future. Especially Gary, he's like a prince. One word from him could decide our family's fate. Make sure you keep pleasing him, Stella, our family's counting on you. My frown deepened, and it was like I couldn't breathe. Someone wrapped me tightly, soothing my brow. So warm. Right, I'm at Eric's place. No parents, no Gary. Here, I don't have to appease anyone. I can just be me. Even if it's temporary. I'll escape as long as I can. I felt my sight slowly recovering. I could sense light through my eyes. Eric even installed an elevator to help me move floors easily. But after the accident, when I lost my sight, I developed separation anxiety. Whenever Eric left for work, I'd feel anxious, alone, like I was cut off from the world. Afraid I'd never see him again or that Gary would return, and things with Eric would revert to how they were. Hearing the car engine, I tapped my cane towards the door to wait for Eric. Does your head hurt? The housekeeper said you didn't eat much today. Eric led me to the living room. I hesitantly asked if he could take me along the next time he went out. He agreed. The next day Eric brought me to his office, putting dark sunglasses on me. The secretary was so thoughtful, downloading a novel app for me, and set up some snacks and fruit on the table. She helped with my headphones too. But Eric intervened. Let the sound play aloud. No need for headphones. Your concussion hasn't fully healed. All right, Eric. The secretary took the headphones, adjusted the volume for me. While Eric worked, I listened to the novel. Right as it got interesting, a call interrupted. I fumbled to answer. It was our class president. Stella, why aren't you replying to messages? Are you free to help me with a freshman entry form? I knew you'd help. I'll bring you some local treats next term. I was scratching my head, trying to find words. Someone grabbed the phone and spoke for me. Sorry, you'll need to handle your own tasks. Stella's not available right now. Eric hung up. You need to learn to say no. Saying no is not shameful. Your life isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about being kind to yourself. You need to express dissatisfaction and be bold to refuse unreasonable requests, got it? I was stunned. It was the first time anyone had told me that. I've always struggled to refuse others smoothly, even when their actions annoyed me. Always thought if I put up with it, they'd eventually see my value, rewarding me accordingly. But that's not how it works. They only demand more and more. But I haven't learned how to say no yet. I secretly promised myself, the next time I'd stand my ground and refuse. It was the weekend, and Eric stayed home with me. Waking up from my nap, I was thrilled to see things a bit clearer, though still hazy as if covered in a white veil, like cataracts. I excitedly ran downstairs to find Eric. I saw Eric's silhouette in the garden. I ran over and hugged him from behind. Eric. My smile froze. The smell was off, he wasn't Eric. The person gripped my hand. Stella, you can see now? I was stunned, my blood froze. It was Gary. How did he come back? Why so fast? Weren't he and Jessica having a good time abroad? Why come find me? I didn't want my finally peaceful life messed up by them again. Stella, are you still not well? Why aren't you talking? What could I say? Could I say please go back to Jessica, I want to keep things as they are with your brother? But I'm weak. Eric was just looking after me for Gary, anyway, I've troubled Eric enough. I shouldn't ask for more. Fortunately, Jessica's rehab wasn't complete, and Gary had to rush back at night. I breathed a sigh of relief under the covers. I hoped Gary would stay with Jessica a few more days. I took my meds and slept especially early. Suddenly, I felt a hand touch my face. It wasn't a pleasant scent. I frowned and instinctively moved away. That person's fingers hesitated, watched me from the bedside for a while, then left. Half dreaming, the mattress beside me gently sank, and I heard the rustling of a pillow. It was a familiar scent, clean with a hint of slightly bitter woody aroma. A man's strong arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me tightly into their embrace. He buried himself in my clavicle, breathing deeply, regulating emotions. His throat slightly choked. Something warm slid down the side of my neck. In my drowsiness, it seemed I heard Eric saying, Stella, don't leave me. In the dream, could Eric actually cry, afraid I'd leave him? It didn't feel like a dream. I turned, forehead against his. My hand reached his face, feeling it damp. Eric, why are you crying? Oh no, I called the wrong name, got caught. My heart raced, like a kid caught lying. Stella, have you always known I was Eric? I could only rigidly nod. I was anxious, sinking into despair. Clearly, I knew from the start he was Gary's brother, yet here I was treating him as a boyfriend, doing intimate things behind Gary's back. I couldn't even respect myself for acting this way. What would Eric think of me? Suddenly, I felt a soft, moist touch on the corner of my mouth. Tender kisses fell, lingering. I widened my eyes, breathing heavily. It felt like I lost all senses, only aware of the feel on my lips. So good, turns out it wasn't just my wishful thinking. What did that mean? Did Eric mean he liked me? My mind was foggy. No way, right? I'm so plain, yet I heard him say, Stella, I've liked you for a long time. The words hit me, making me dizzy. I confirmed repeatedly it wasn't a dream. Being confessed to, my first reaction was to escape. My palms were sweating, nervously unsure how to respond. What do I say? Eric chuckled. Say you like me too. I froze. Yeah, I did like him after all. What was I scared of? What was I avoiding? Be a bit braver. I burrowed into Eric's embrace, hugging him tightly. I like you too. My ears burned. The next day, I edited a voice message breakup text for Gary. It basically said I hoped he and Jessica would be well together, and it was over between us. I didn't know if me initiating a breakup would hurt his pride, considering no one dared to dump him. But if I didn't, who knows how long Gary would drag it out. I no longer wanted to play these games with Gary and Jessica. After sending the message, I finally did something I wanted to do for a long time. I blocked Gary. Blocking Gary felt incredibly refreshing. Finally, no more midnight calls from him. After doing all that, I called my parents to let them know I broke up. Otherwise, they'd frequently ask about Gary and me. My mom, who was originally joking with my brother on the phone, turned stern listening to me. Are you sure? Listen, Stella, you absolutely can't agree to break up. You have to cling to Gary. You don't know how many people envy you for dating him. When you marry him, it'll be. I interrupted, I'm the one who suggested the breakup. I knew my mom would flip out, call me ungrateful, not considering them at all. But I had to say it, I'm an adult now. I don't like Gary at all. Why should I follow your wishes and please him? I'm not happy with him. I'll make my own choices for my life. After venting, my hand was still shaking as I hung up. I took a deep breath. It felt amazing to finally say those words. The way I lived before was just too stifling. Eric was right, I should have learned to say no earlier. Soon after, my mom sent a text. Mom's furious. Stella, if you don't reconcile with Gary, don't come home. For as long as I can remember, my sole purpose was to connect with Gary, I guess. These days, if Eric has time, he'd take me for eye acupuncture. My eyes were getting better each day, though still sensitive to strong light. At night, Eric and I would go for walks. Fingers intertwined, aimlessly strolling. We'd chat about this and that, even a weird rock could be a topic. Even with silence, it never felt awkward, we enjoyed the moment of syncing heartbeats. To me, walking with someone you like is quite a private and ambiguous thing. Doing everyday things with someone you like brings so much happiness. With the perfect mood under the street lamp, I tiptoed to kiss him. Eric hugged me, smiling suddenly. He hesitated. Eric, what's wrong? I was puzzled. Nothing, it's windy tonight, let's head home. Not far away, Gary clenched his fists, knuckles cracking. Only now did he realize, Stella had called out to his brother that day, mistaking him for Eric. Bro, you like Stella? Gary stated, through gritted teeth. Only realizing now? Wasn't it obvious before? Trusting you, only for you to pull this on me. Gary's eyes were wild. When you sent me that photo, was Stella in your bed? I was in her bed, Eric corrected. Gary lost it completely. You knew she was my girlfriend. Your own brother's girlfriend. Eric scoffed and asked, what about you? You knew your girlfriend was hurt and lost her sight, yet you still went abroad with your first love. Did you ever think of her as your girlfriend? Gary slumped, I've never competed with you for anything, ever. I don't need anything else, I just want you to give Stella back to me. Eric found it a bit amusing. Gary, have you ever respected Stella? Did you ever see her as a person? Is she something you can toss away when you want and take back when you need? Eric tapped the table with his index and middle fingers. Besides, what could you ever compete with me for? Whether it's the company or Stella, it's based on merit and skill. Gary, in frustration and shame, swept everything off Eric's desk onto the floor. Stella loves me. Once I come back, she'll return to me. You're confident, aren't you? Do you really believe she'd come back to you without any hard feelings after being repeatedly abandoned? Compared to Gary's messy situation, Eric, the older one, appeared more composed. I trusted you so much. Eric? I heard a big commotion in Eric's study. As soon as I opened the door, I saw that Gary was trying to hit Eric. I know Gary can't beat Eric, but I still ran to protect Eric. I glared at Gary, thinking it's one thing for him to cause trouble outside, but going after his own brother is another story. Stella, listen to me. I didn't mean to deceive you. If I knew my brother liked you, I would have never let him take care of you for me. I let you down. Now that I'm back, I've realized my mistake. You can pretend you never sent those breakup texts. Stella, let's start over, okay? I was taken aback. I thought once I sent the breakup text, Gary and I were done, especially since he's so prideful. I didn't expect him to come back from abroad to find me. I never liked you. Why are you mad? You never like me either, right? Gary wobbled. That's not true, I do like you. Those days abroad made me certain of it, and I even bought a ring. Gary quickly pulled out a ring. If you agree, let's get engaged. I'm serious this time. She doesn't agree. Eric pulled me into his arms. Your sister-in-law is nearly showing, aren't you over it yet? I glanced down at my stomach, nothing was showing, of course blushing, I knew we hadn't been intimate. I said to Gary, I've always liked your brother, and we've already broken up. You need to look at your own feelings and be with Jessica. Gary persisted, I know how I feel, I like you, not Jessica. Are you saying this because you're jealous? I promise to stay away from Jessica from now on, Stella. Can't you give me another chance? I looked at him calmly and shook my head. I'd never seen Gary so devastated before. Finally, Eric called someone to escort Gary out. Since I broke up with Gary, maybe it was a hit to his ego, and he did seem down for a few days. People kept calling me to pick up a drunk Gary from the bar. At first, I patiently explained that I wasn't his girlfriend, but after too many calls, I just blocked unknown numbers. But he's a playboy after all, quickly finding someone new. Stella, it's not like I can't live without you. He flaunted his new girlfriend in public. Great. I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe my expression was too obvious because a shadow crossed his face. Gary let go of the girl and walked toward me with red eyes. He grabbed my hand. Stella, do you have a heart? How can you just say you don't like me anymore? I admit leaving you with my brother was wrong, but I apologized, didn't I? What else do you want? I know my brother only said you looked pregnant to upset me. I never intended to break up with you, I do like you. That girl is just someone I hired. Stella, why won't you give me a way out? A crowd gathered around the classroom door to watch. I pulled my hand back and looked Gary in the eye, speaking clearly, I'm not making a scene. The breakup is real, and not liking you is real too. You say you like me, but I've never felt it. I don't want to play house with you and Jessica anymore. You should be looking for Jessica, not me. I walked around him and left. Where are you going? He asked. I looked back. My boyfriend's waiting downstairs to go home with me. Your boyfriend? Who? Your brother. I said confidently, Eric. I walked away without looking back, leaving a bunch of classmates whispering. Wow, this plot is so intense. OMG, so Gary's brother is the real big shot, huh? Turns out Gary went from the main guy to the sidekick. Don't you know his brother Eric? He's the new big name in business, and he's on the latest rich list. When will I get a chance to be the leading lady? The crowd dispersed, but Gary stood there alone. After my parents found out I was with Eric, they came to see me with smiles on their faces. Stella, if you told us you liked Eric, we wouldn't have pushed you to be with Gary. Even though we were a bit strict, it was all for your own good. Have we ever deprived you of anything you needed? Exactly, Stella. You have to understand that we're just parents who want the best for you. I didn't say much, politely showed them out. Family is something you can't cut off. You can't repay the kindness of being raised, but I'm not gonna follow their every whim anymore. I'm no longer the obedient daughter they can control. I'm not showing kindness to them because whenever they get the chance, they latch on like leeches, expecting me to make things better for their son. No way. Later I heard Gary and Jessica got together, but they were arguing all the time. Eventually, Jessica got fed up and left to study abroad, and Gary didn't stop her. That day, I got a text from Jessica. Out of all Gary's girlfriends, you're the only one who made me feel threatened. Thinking back, I've been pretty childish all these years. I must have been like those villainous side characters in novels. I always wondered how you could tolerate so much. Turns out, you never loved Gary. I gotta say, I admire you. Out of all of us, you might be the most clear-headed. I've finally hit a dead end and realized it's time to move on. You don't have to reply. We probably won't see each other again. Wishing us both a great future. Eric noticed me looking at him and put down his file. What's up? I dove into his arms, expressing my feelings. I really like you. Eric chuckled softly. I love you. It's such bliss. Epilogue. Eric got a call from his spoiled brother during a meeting. He didn't want to answer at first, but ended up connecting by accident. Just as he was about to hang up, he heard Gary's voice on the other end. Can you look after Stella for me? Hearing this, Eric's lips curled up slightly. He motioned to pause the meeting and walked out. The employees left in the room looked at each other puzzled. What's going on? Eric's usually stone-faced, but he smiled after a phone call. Would you take care of Stella for me? Sure. He answered. He seemed calm, but his hands gripped the phone tightly, trembling. What a good turn of events.